Coming to you live from Nashville, the Memphis Grizzlies hosted their second training camp practice. We talked to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. We talked to Jerome. We talked to Tuomas Iisalo. We're going to talk about all that coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host today, Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm coming to you today from Nashville, Tennessee. I've been here the last couple of days watching the Grizzlies practice and take in the environment here at training camp. We're on the last day now, on to day 3 of training camp, so we're going to break that down as well. A lot to talk about regarding training camp so far. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies each and every single day with us, especially on today. Make sure you continue to like, comment, rate, review, subscribe, all those good things as we continue to make Locked On Grizzlies a better show for you guys going forward. But we got to talk about training camp. The Grizzlies are in training camp now, and we're starting to talk to the players. We're talking to Tuomas Iisalo every single day. I'm here in Nashville on the ground. I've been watching the players practice and whatnot a little bit when the media is allowed to be there. But we got some things to talk about. Later on in the show, we're going to talk about a couple of the injured guys, Jaren Jackson Jr., Zach Edey. I know that people want to hear at least some type of update. We got the timeline, but what are they doing, in the meantime? We're going to talk about that later on in the show. But right now, if you're watching on YouTube, you see a quote up there. And if you see, the thumbnail and all that, you see a quote. And the quote says, defense wins games. Now, what we're used to hearing is the saying is defense wins championships. But in this case, we got in quotation marks, meaning someone said it. It came from someone. Defense wins games. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope said that. After practice on Wednesday, we talked to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. We talked to Jerome. We talked to Tuomas Iisalo. We talk to Iisalo every day after practice, but it's different players. Of course, in the first day, we talked to Morant. We talked to Santi Aldama on the first day. Joe Mullinax, my co-host, did a great job of breaking down everything that those guys talked about, specifically with the speed, skill, mentality. I think we're going to be talking about that a lot more over the course of the year, what that means, what it looks like. But that is more of an offensive thing. It's a philosophy, too, as Iisalo said. They want to be fast in everything that they do. Speed isn't just we want to lead the league in pace, because guess what? The Grizzlies have already done that. They did it last season. It's more about being fast, being efficient, time efficient in everything that you do. But I think when people think speed kills, they're going to think more on the offensive end. So when we went into day 2 of practice, my focus was more on defense. And we talked to the right guy in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to talk about defense. And there were a lot of takeaways from the conversation, with him, from the conversation with Tuomas Iisalo. And I'm going to start with the head coach. I'm going to start with the head coach because he had an interesting perspective when he was talking about the Grizzlies defense, because we've talked about it on here recently, right? The idea that Taylor Jenkins sort of designed all these recently really good Grizzlies defenses. And he's gone. Whereas offensively, it's a little bit easier to replace Taylor Jenkins because during his tenure, they were pretty much hiring guys, hoping that those guys could, especially in his last 2 seasons. We saw a couple years ago, they brought in Patrick St. Andrews, and the idea was, this is going to be the guy to help the offense go to another level. And then the year after that, they bring in Noah LaRoche. They bring in, a couple other guys. And it's like, these are the people who are going to help the offense go to another level. And didn't work. The Grizzlies, even though you look at the end of the season, offensive rating was, I think, 6th in the league, but it just didn't feel like it would work in the playoffs, and it didn't against Oklahoma City. But that's a whole nother point. The point that we want to talk about today, we're going to emphasize the defense. Defense. And I want to start with Iisalo because I asked him about defense, and he had an interesting perspective, so to speak, and basically said that, you got to remember that Iisalo has those European, he has a European background, and he mentioned, a quote that he had heard, from an Italian soccer coach. And it was something like, playing against us is like going to the dentist. That's what the coach said. And Iisalo said, that's how I want it. That's how I want people to feel when they think of the Grizzlies defense. It's like going to the dentist. He said it should be an unpleasant experience. That was his quotes. An unpleasant experience. That's what it should be like playing against the Grizzlies defense. Now, here's the thing when it comes to Iisalo and defense, because you remember with Taylor Jenkins, it was, hey, we want to stop you from scoring in the paint. We want to make you take low percentage three-point shots. Like, sure, you can get some three-point shots up, but we don't want, Steph Curry shooting at the top of the key wide open, or we don't want PJ Tucker shooting corner threes. We want to put you in situations where the numbers say if he takes that shot, so be it, live with it. That's the situations that we want to put you in. The Grizzlies did a really good job of that over the course of his tenure. But with Iisalo, at least in the conversations that we had, again, it's only been 2 training camp practices. I'm sure we'll learn more as time goes on and whatnot. But what we know so far is Iisalo isn't as focused on, hey, we want to stop this team from scoring in the paint as much. Hey, we want to stop this team from shooting as many threes. Hey, we want to take away the mid-range shot for this guy. He's more result-driven from the standpoint of not result-driven. Let me backtrack. He's more process-driven. I want my guys to play hard. I want my guys to give energy. I want my guys to communicate. And if all those things happen, we should reach our potential as a top-tier defense. You ask Iisalo, what's his favorite stat defensively? It's not anything fancy. It's not any of those advanced stats like, when the team passes the ball around the perimeter, the points per possession, or when the team touches the paint, what's their point? It's none of that type of stuff. For Iisalo, it's really simple. His favorite defensive stat, defensive rating. He wants the Grizzlies to have one of the top defensive ratings in the NBA. And guess what? I can't blame him. Because you go through recent history. I'm just going to go back to 2010 because there are a lot of people who came along in the grit and grind era, right? So let's take the grit and grind era and to now. You're talking about a roughly 15-year time period, right? So let's say since then, the Grizzlies have finished top 5 in defensive rating 4 times. 4 times. Since 2010, the Grizzlies have had 4 seasons where they finished top 5 in defensive rating. Guess what? Each of those seasons are also the only 4 years in that same time period where the Grizzlies had won 50 or more games. The Grizzlies won 50 or more games 4 times since 2010. Each time they had a top 5 defensive rating team. I can't argue with Iisalo. I can't argue. Clearly, a high top 5 defensive rating, at least in the Grizzlies case, transfers to some really good success, at least in the regular season, and then the playoffs, whatever happens. But if you go through the history with the Grizzlies, they did it twice in the grit and grind era where they had top 5 defenses. In the Taylor Jenkins era, in his 6 seasons, they had 2 top 5 defenses. And before Taylor Jenkins, in those 2 seasons, the Grizzlies went to the Western Conference semifinals one year. Then they went to the Western Conference Finals the other year. Under Taylor Jenkins, second round of the playoffs, Western Conference semifinals, and then first round of the playoffs, the loss against the Los Angeles Lakers that season. The point being is, defensive rating is a very important stat, and he's got the buy-in from the guys. And the reason that I say he has the buy-in for the guys, kind of pivoting a little bit here, going to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, is the competition is there. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope doesn't know he's starting. Jalen Wells doesn't know he's starting. And Cedric Howard, Vince Williams, G. Jackson. These guys are competing. Iisalo's feeding off of that competition in camp so far. And how he's feeding off of that is he's giving them 2 types of drills. This is what he told us on Wednesday. He said, I'm giving the guys 2 types of drills right now. There's one type of drill where, it's the, let's see what we got is how I characterize it. It's the let's learn about our players. We want to put them through drills. They didn't have these drills, when Taylor Jenkins was the coach or whatever the case may be. This is Iisalo putting his touch on things. So he's got to walk guys through it. They have to learn those drills. Then you have the other drills where if you bragging rights on the line, pride. ego. Those drills where, hey, if you finish near the top or you beat guys down the court, is you're sending a statement. So they have a combination of those, and Iisalo likes that. He wants his guys to compete. He feels like there's a healthy line that you toe in terms of competing in conflict and things like that. So going back to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, we'll talk more about him in the next segment, and we'll talk about what I'm calling right now two-way tie. Two-way tie is two-way Ty Jerome. We talked to Ty Jerome, after Wednesday's practice, and he talked a lot about his defense as well. We're going to talk about that coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we get to that, today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Peloton. Listen up, Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructions. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. Listen, if you want to ask me what I think about Peloton, look, I love how the Peloton IQ system offers real-time strength coaching. It actually tracks your reps, suggests the right weights, and can correct your form. That's important for a lot of y'all. It corrects your form, making it every rep safer and smarter. Make sure you go take advantage of that right now. So don't let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. Again, that's onepeloton.com. Make sure you go take advantage of that now over at Peloton. The Grizzlies got some two-way players this year. And I'm not just saying that. I'm not just trying to hype people up or whatever the case may be. Like, this is what I truly believe. They did a good job of identifying that. Now, did they create a weakness in the process? Yes. I'm going to talk about that a lot more. And believe me, in the last 2 days, I've learned a lot about, the importance of secondary playmakers, because that's my issue with this team right now. If you throw a starting line up there with Jalen Wells, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Jaren Jackson Jr., Zach Edey, Jock Landale, however you want to slice it at the center spot, you're going to have four guys out there that have averaged less than 3 assists per game for their career. But we'll get to that later, because right now we're focusing on defense. We're not focusing on the offensive stuff right now. Right now it's strictly about the defense. And I'm going to start with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, because we talked to him, and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, again, had a lot of really good things to say, because as I said in the first segment, this is a guy who really believes that defense wins games. He believes you play strong defense, you compete, you communicate, you're going to win some games. And again, I can't blame him for having that mentality, because guess what? He did it with the Lakers. Then he left there. He did it with the Nuggets. Then he went to Orlando. Like, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope knows what winning basketball looks like. He's been a part of it. He knows exactly what it looks like. And defense is so important to him. Let me give this quote that Kentavious Caldwell-Pope gave after practice. He said, the way we're going, I think we can be back at the top of the West. How fast we want to play, the chemistry we're building here, it's just us playing together is going to be key. Basically, he's saying the team got to be healthy. Because if they're on the floor with the speed that they want to play at on the offensive end, they're going to create easy scoring opportunities, right? Another way to create easy scoring opportunities is getting stops on defense. When you get a stop on defense, you don't got to worry about taking the ball on the net and slowing down from that standpoint. You get the ball on defense, you go, boom. You got a nice, efficient, smooth-sailing offense, so to speak. But Kentavious Caldwell-Pope likes competition too. And we talked about the wings. But listening to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope talk about it gave me a little bit of a different perspective. And the way I look at it right now, and this is just me talking, it's 5 players for 3 spots. I say that because I know John Morant's going to play. I feel like Scottie Pippen Jr. is going to play. I know Ty Jerome is going to play. That's 3 guys right there at point guard and backcourt. Now you got 2 starting wings. We're projecting to be Jalen Wells, Scottie Pippen Jr. Not Scottie Pippen Jr., excuse me. Jalen Wells and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. That's what we're expecting to be your starters. Then you got one more spot. in the rotation as a reserve. Because you got Scottie Pippen Jr., Ty Jerome. Who's going to be the guy who flanks beside them? Will it be a Vince Williams? Will it be G.G. Jackson? Will it be Cedric Coward? The options are there, but there's no firm answer. There's no firm answer on who will win that job. But the point is, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is conscious of it. He's already talking about the fact that we don't want our bigs to be in foul trouble. That's important to me because to give more context, I asked him about the fact that how important is it as a defender to pretty much stay in front of your man? Because we talked to Jaren at Media Day, and Jaren basically, said, hey, it's on me. No matter what they do up there, if a guy beats him off the dribble or whatever the case may be, it is on me to protect this rim. I'm the one who has to prevent that team from scoring in my paint. That was Jaren Jackson Jr.'s mentality. And that sounds good in theory. Sounds believable when you look at his block numbers over the course of his career. Like maybe he will swat every shot that comes in the paint while he's in there. But there's got to be a but here. But with that being the case, right? I think, when you look at this situation with the Grizzlies, with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, with all these wings that they have, it's packed. There's a lot of depth. And they're going to need some of these guys to play a small ball role. Iisalo mentioned Cedric Coward. He mentioned, he didn't mention G.G. Jackson, but he mentioned Cedric Coward. He mentioned Kentavious Caldwell-Pope as guys who can downsize and potentially slide over to the floor. But Kentavious Caldwell-Pope likes the competition. I'm very curious to see how the competition plays out on the wing. Like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope says, hey, we want to keep our bigs out of foul trouble. He calls it guarding your yard. Going to stay in front of my man. Going to guard my yard and protect my yard. The other thing I want to talk about defensively is a guy I haven't talked about defensively at all, and that's Ty Jerome. Now, if you're new here, and I got to shout the everydayers out because the everydayers, they've heard me talk about this. But when the Grizzlies went out and got Ty Jerome, I wasn't a huge fan. It wasn't a talent thing. It wasn't a money thing because I was a huge fan of the contract that the Grizzlies got him for. It was more because of how is that going to work? I don't say how that's going to work just because he's a talented player. How is that going to work? Because the identity shift that's happening, everything that's been communicated to me, everything that's been communicated publicly is we want dogs. We want guys who are going to get after it on the defensive end that can complement Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. With Ty Jerome, do I believe that you have a player who can complement Ja and Jaren? For sure. Do I believe that you have a dog on the basketball court? Yeah. But do you have an overall dog? Do you have a guy who's going to be a great defender? I don't think so. But when I talk to Ty Jerome after practice, I'm willing to step back a little bit. Like I'm willing to say, you know what? Maybe I need to give Ty Jerome more of a chance on defense. So I talked to people at Grizzlies practice, and you talk to Ty Jerome after practice. Everyone who speaks on Ty Jerome talks about his IQ. You hear this with some guys. Like Iisalo even said, hey, Ty Jerome, Ja Morant, like those are the guys that come to mind when I think of high IQ players. But the difference between Ty Jerome and Ja Morant, which is where I'm getting at with this, they're completely different level athletes. Ja Morant is a world-class athlete. Ty Jerome, solid, skilled player who can pull out a couple athletic moves every now and then, but that is not his game. That is not what he's going to do, and that's not what he's known for. So when you factor that in, and you think about, okay, Ty Jerome's got to play defense, right? Because Iisalo likes the lineup combinations that can come with Scottie Pippen Jr., Ja Morant, and Ty Jerome. Mix it up, basically. Scottie Pippen Jr. and Ty Jerome may play together one day. Ty Jerome may play with Ja Morant the next day. You have different combinations. But getting into the point with Ty Jerome, he's confident. And when I say he's confident, yeah. But I'll run through a couple quotes. Make sure you go check out my story over at the Commercial Appeal, where I kind of break down every practice. We're going to continue to do that. We're going to do it for Thursdays as well. So make sure you go check out all my content over at thecommercialappeal.com. But here's something that Ty Jerome said, and it stood out to me. He said, one thing about me, I've always been a winner, and I've always tried to impact winning. If you ask me what do you do best, I would say impact winning. And that's not just offensively. You got to fight defensively. That quote stood out to me. Because I also said, Ty Jerome, what can Grizzlies expect from you on a defensive end? He said effort. And then you factor in the IQ. You factor in the effort. And you say, oh, maybe I ain't giving this guy enough credit. Maybe Ty Jerome can, pickpocket some guys a little bit and have some type of simplified defensive role. But I was encouraged by the fact that, hey, he basically said, I'm going to give you the effort. And for all my physical limitations, which Ty Jerome certainly has, for all my physical limitations, I'm going to make up for it in different areas. I'm going to be really smart. I'm going to beat guys to the punch. I'm going to think when a guy's dribbling the basketball in front of me, I'm going to think about what their next move potentially could be. So my worry meter for Ty Jerome defensively, I was probably about a 9 or so at first. I'm going to mildly go down to about a 7. I ain't down to like a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 yet. Y'all can stay over there. I'm not there yet. But the point is, with the Grizzlies' emphasis on defense, you got Kentavious Caldwell-Pope saying, hey, if we lock in on defense like that, we can win a whole bunch of games. You got Ty Jerome, basically saying that I'm going to give the effort. I'm going to do whatever I got to do to show that I want to be a part of a championship level defense. Two other players who are going to be big parts of that are Jaren Jackson Jr. and Zach Edey. We're going to talk about them next, coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we get to that, today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. Listen up, the NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Make sure you go take advantage of this right now. I'm taking advantage of it. I won a nice same-game parlay on FanDuel, betting on MLB baseball. So many different opportunities, so many different sports out there. I love the same-game parlays, whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the stats. FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com right now to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Again, that's FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app and get started. Make sure you go take advantage of that now over at FanDuel.com. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. And now we got to talk about the two injured guys, Jaren Jackson Jr. and Zach Edey. Well, it's really technically 3, Brandon Clark is also out as well. But I want to focus on the two other guys specifically because they're dressing out. Zach Edey and Jaren Jackson Jr. have dressed out for practices. They're not just in the corner, with sweatpants on, dribbling, which we've seen a lot of guys do when they just physically can't participate in practice. But again, it was very important when we saw those timelines, when we saw the Grizzlies put out the injury updates. It was very important to notice that with Jaren Jackson Jr., he's expected to be back in 4 or 6 weeks. With Zach Edey, he's expected to be back in 6 to 9 weeks. In no case did it say we'll reevaluate in 6 weeks or we'll see where this is in 4 weeks or whatever the case may be. There was none of that. But the thing about this Grizzlies team right now is they're going to need Zach Edey. We already know they're going to need Jaren Jackson Jr. That doesn't have to be explained. I've talked about it time and time again. I know some people have said to me, like, DeMarco, you're really high on Zach Edey. It's not even about that. I can't emphasize this enough. It's not about Zach Edey taking some massive jump as an individual player. It's more about the role that he's about to be in Iisalo's system. He's going to be asked to set screens, which he's really good at. He's going to be asked to score, in the low post, in the paint, and he's going to be asked to be a strong rebounder. I don't think the Grizzlies are going to be a good rebounding team while Zach Edey is out. I've said that time and time again. I think that first month or so that Zach Edey misses, we're going to see the Grizzlies probably being in the 20s or late teens or whatever the case may be, because Zach Edey is important. But I want you guys to know they're getting their reps, especially Jaren Jackson Jr. when we were talking to, a couple of guys, after these recent practices. Ty Jerome is already working with Jaren Jackson Jr. in terms of pick and roll. Now, let me back up a little bit because I want to talk a little bit about, the new offensive system. And we're going to save a lot of that for future episodes, but this was mentioned in Wednesday's practice. And one of those things that was mentioned was the fact that Jaren Jackson Jr. hasn't been the roller, hasn't been the screen setter in these screens for the most part of his career. That hasn't been him. That has not been Jaren Jackson Jr. All of a sudden, in Iisalo's system, it's set a screen, roll to the basket, flare out to the three-point line, whatever the case may be. Jaren Jackson Jr. is being asked to set screens now, and it's a learning process. I remember when Steven Adams used to talk about stuff like this, but we're seeing it in real time where the Grizzlies will probably need, Jaren Jackson Jr. to be more efficient in those situations. He's got to be, because it's the system. And it's good to know because, Jaren Jackson Jr., Zach Edey, we don't get to see them a lot at practice. But from what I've seen, specifically with Jaren Jackson Jr., he is already, practicing pick and roll angles. Like, that's how much of a student Ty Jerome is. Like, they want to focus on pick and roll angles and things like that. So when Jaren Jackson Jr. gets back, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. So Jaren Jackson Jr. and Zach Edey, they're not just idle off to the side, clapping their hands or whatever the case may be. Like, they're working. Again, they have returned to play dates. So right now, I think what we're seeing is those two are being built up for when their eventual return to play dates come. So, look, we got one more day of Memphis Grizzlies training camp. I'm going to make sure I try to keep you guys in tune. If you got any questions, let me know. Put it in the YouTube comments. You got any questions you want me to ask Coach? We're going to talk to a couple more players tomorrow. You got any questions you want me to ask the players? Let us know in the comments. We might can do something about that for you guys as well. But speaking of doing something about that, thank you for making Locked On your first listen every day. For your second listen, go find the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Josh Lloyd hosted the #1 fantasy basketball podcast, giving you daily tips and helping you win your league, all while making you a smarter NBA fan. Find Locked On Fantasy Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. I want to appreciate you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies with me on today. We're going to talk to some other players tomorrow, and I'm going to come back. I'm going to break that down with you guys. Again, if you have any questions, let us know as well. We want to be a community over here, as Joe Mullinex likes to say, my co-host, in our small bubble of the world. I would like to think that I'm getting all the questions answered that you guys have as fans. So if you got any questions, you got any comments or concerns with the Grizzlies, not with me. With me, I think we're good. I hope we're good at least. But with the Grizzlies, just let us know, and we'll see, if all those things are worth getting addressed as well. But until next time, appreciate you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies on today's episode. Joe Mullinex will probably be out tomorrow as well. So you'll be back with me again. But appreciate you guys for tuning in Locked On Grizzlies. Remember, the Locked On Grizzlies is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Damichael Cole, and we'll see you on Locked On Grizzlies.